So in this segment, we're going to be discussing pressure builds on the DUP over the Windsor framework. Sorry, I get confused between that and the protocol. So the DUP has been urged by the other Stormont parties to get back into government following the announcement of the deal. A new EU-UK agreement was announced on Monday, which Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said would make Northern Ireland, quote, the world's most exciting economic zone, end quote. And the DUP said it would take time to come to a collective decision. So you had Ian Paisley really early on effectively saying that the Windsor framework is not good enough and he's going to have to go back into negotiations. The DUP won't go back into Stormont. And that's something he told to Nicholas Watt. Looks like Paisley has already made his move. Donaldson will be under tremendous pressure to reject the deal. The question is, what will the party decide? Because the hardliners like Paisley and Wilson have already rejected the agreement. The Prime Minister was in Northern Ireland on Tuesday to promote the new deal and so-called Windsor framework, which will reduce checks on goods going from GB to NI. Sinn Féin Vice President Michelle O'Neill said she spoke to Mr Sunak and told him to keep up the momentum. Quote, people are clearly focused on getting an executive up and running and want all parties around the table working together to deliver for workers, families and local businesses, end quote. Her party leader, Mary Lou MacDonald, added, quote, there's no justification for the DUP to continue this reckless and damaging boycott of democracy, end quote. And there's going to be a lot of pressure from Sinn Féin on the DUP. But given that if the DUP do go back to Stormont, there will be a Sinn Féin First Minister, I can see them using that as another reason not to go back into Stormont. Most of them won't say it because say it openly, because it would make a complete mockery of democracy. But they'll hide behind the new Windsor framework, saying it's not good enough, and therefore we won't go back into Stormont. Speaking after a meeting with Mr Sunak, Ulster Unionist Party Doug Beattie said it was, quote, disingenuous, end quote, for any political party to suggest it would take weeks or months to respond to the Windsor framework. Quote, we need to hear from business, we need to know if it works for them, people need to show the courage of their convictions, look at the deal, come up with your own your analysis and make your pitch, end quote. And that's from Doug Beattie. It should take no more than a few days. Donaldson is happy with some parts of the new agreement, but once more, I can't see that happening. The DUP set the bar so high, so have the other unionists, or some of them. They won't climb down. The problem for the DUP is that they're going to fear losing support to the more radical TUV and the less radical UUP, and any loss of support makes it easier for Sinn Féin to keep winning. The DUP are going to be fearing a split here. If they're not radical enough, they risk hemorrhaging votes to the TUV, and if they're too radical, they risk losing votes to the UUP, potentially. Alliance Party leader Naomi Long said the deal, which has been signed 4 years ago, if she described the UK had a quite serious Prime Minister at the time. So she's saying it would have been done by now. She said, quote, I think this is a good deal for Northern Ireland. Whether it's a good deal for the DUP or not is for them to decide. I can say with certainty and confidence, there is not going to be a better one, end quote, Ms Long continued. Jim Allister, leader of the TUV, said the agreement, quote, does not live up to the overselling spin which accompanied it, end quote. And he says, quote, as for it being enough to cause unionists to give up its Stormont leverage and settle for this deal, which comes with the added package of a Sinn Féin First Minister, then no thanks, end quote. So you can see about the First Minister thing. The DUP and the SDLP and Labour Party, the SDLP leaders are currently in London and did not meet with Sunak. DUP leader Donaldson said there was absolutely not a split in opinion among colleagues over the EU-UK agreement. But already not all the DUP members are on the same page. And I've got news for you, Donny. That in itself means there's a split. Maybe not a big one, but a split. Ian Paisley, a more hardline DUP figure, cast what he called a gut verdict and said he did not think the plan went far enough. DUP colleague Sammy Wilson insisted no EU law should apply in Northern Ireland at all. See what I mean about setting the bar too high? There's no way that's going to happen. So Sammy Wilson has clearly set the bar way too high here, and he's not going to achieve what he wants, and that puts pressure on Donaldson. Donaldson has been speaking in much more nuanced terms on Tuesday, saying only EU law which allowed businesses to trade in the EU markets should apply. And, there is the idea that Donaldson is more of a pragmatist than Sammy Wilson or Paisley, and I think we're kind of seeing that here. And, Donaldson's argument here makes no sense. There's no way to know which businesses, do just trade in Northern Ireland. There's data and things like that, but without a lot more checks after goods have entered Ireland, there's not much they can do. Plus, it just creates more headaches for companies that want to export to Ireland, as you would need standards checks. What he's calling for is for dual regulations or a dual regulatory system, which, Liz Truss tried that and it got shot down. It doesn't make sense, and it's a worse system overall, in my opinion. On his second visit to Northern Ireland in as many weeks, Sunak told businesses and leaders the deal would put Northern Ireland in, quote, unbelievably special position in having privileged access not just to UK home market, but also to the European single market. And nobody else has that. No one, only you guys, only here, and that is the prize, end quote. Huge own goal for Sunak, and we'll cover that at some point. But it's gotten him a lot of flack because he's touting the value of the single market, despite the fact that we left the EU and the single market. Just doesn't make any sense. Businesses have been poring over the details of the new agreement. Sarah Hards from local haulage company AM Logistics, based in Larne Harbour, said the Windsor framework was further reaching than expected. Quote, what has come across is actually more beneficial than previously thought. Ellipses. It almost takes us back to pre-Brexit times, end quote. I don't know about that, but she would be in a better position to answer that than I would be. She also said, quote, the politicians aren't on the front lines, ellipses. It's a really positive step forward that needs to be sold to the people of Northern Ireland, end quote. Liam Bradley, who owns 17 pharmaceutical companies across Northern Ireland, hopes the new deal will help alleviate industry issues the industry has faced post-Brexit, saying, quote, up to now, manufacturers of drugs had to produce two different types of packs, one's for use in the rest of the UK and one for use in Northern Ireland, he said. Some companies or manufacturers actually decided that this wasn't worth doing here because our market is so small, and this led to issues around availability of some medicines, end quote. Surely it would have made sense just to make medicine packs that say to be sold in the UK only. Bit weird. Wafer Limited, based in Londonderry, supplies wafer ice cream products across the UK. Wafer ice cream normally really good. Managing Director Neil Doherty said, quote, we were having trouble in bringing stuff in from the UK. If we have a green lane for stuff coming into Northern Ireland, that is fantastic. I really hope it works, that people see it in a positive light, end quote. Clearly businesses are happy with the new arrangements, or at least happier. On the medicines, hopefully that gets resolved, and no doubt there'll be a lot of businesses desperate to get on that trusted trader list and benefit from the green lane, but we don't have the full details on who is on the green lane yet. I don't think we've even got the methodology of getting onto the green lane. I just want to bring you some more attention. This is from Sam McBride, saying DUP MP Ian Paisley, in an apparent solo run, tells Stephen Noland, quote, absolutely, I don't believe this deal meets our tests, end quote. And then he cites the legal opinion of former Northern Ireland Attorney General John Larkin, that it doesn't meet some of the tests. The internal DUP politics are messy, and so clearly Ian Paisley has gone out of his way twice in this week now to really poke holes in the Windsor framework, and he's trying to put more pressure, I think, on Donaldson and the rest of the party to reject the deal here, because we've only heard from Donaldson really saying the deal needs to go a lot further, but he's happy with some aspects of it, which there's the pragmatism. But Sammy Wilson has gone out of his way to say the deal's not good enough. You've got Ian Paisley saying the deal isn't good enough, and what that does, that puts more pressure on the party, because we've not heard anyone say yet that the deal is good enough, and that's one of the problems we're facing here. I just can't see them going back into Stormont, which is going to be a problem. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.